26. Okay, what? Our number? Okay, well, okay, all of that. Pues aquí we are going to start with this beautiful poster.
So in this poster we present the first planetary nebula that has characteristic of waterfall rays. So it has water races at high velocities. We present why it is a planetary nebula, where is it in the color diagrams, IRAS and NS6. And then the observations, the laser observations, and how it fits the infrared images.
Okay, thank you very much. That was fast. So, next poster.
This poster is about NGC 1535. We obtained optical spectrum in 3 different positions. On the nebula, with the ratio of the oxygen 3 over oxygen 2 for violet lines as ionization criterion, we identify 6 rayons in the nebula. We will develop a comparative study of the chemical composition in this planetary nebula. Thank you.
Thank you, Riviera. Okay, so we have next poster.
Okay, we resolved the life profiles of a couple of planetary nebulae in NGC 6822. NGC 6822 is an irregular galaxy from the local group. It has two dynamical systems, a huge H1 disk that has rotational, it's rotating, and stellar spheroid, it's rotating almost right angles to the H disk. The planetary nebula are the crosses. This aquí, well, it cannot be seen very well, you can see it better. The most interesting of the planetary nebula we study is the PN7. If we could resolve the line profile, we can see these ejections, like bipolar ejections. NGC 6822, it's with a distance of 460 kiloparsecs. So it's interesting that we find this. It has a velocity. The ejection has a velocity of 140 kilometers.
Okay, as a member of the Chain of Planets team, we've been looking at planetary nebula within 1.5 kiloparsecs of us. In particular, we had 35 from Cycle 12 and archival studies previously, and this is a poster about the preliminary results from Cycle 14. In particular, we have found 3 new X-ray point sources, HBDS1, NGC 6337, and SV1, as well as adding 3 new diffuse X-ray sources, NGC 1501, 6369, and 3918, as well as a second detection of Hubble 5. And in particular, we have also noted that we have reached 100% of all Wolf-Rayet central star planetary nebula have been detected with diffuse X-rays.
Okay, thank you very much.
On behalf of our student, Corey Shane Pickers, I'm presenting his honours thesis that's on before a PhD, his thesis work. As part of our world domination of used a fairly simple approach where we just get the broadband and spectroscopic data and model using black body curves. Because we've used that uniform approach right across this population out of the Tarun catalogue, of which is Sherpa. That will allow us to, using some standard assumed luminosities, integrate under the SEDs and get a distance. So ultimately we'll be able to compare the different populations of post-AGB stars with different populations of planetary nebulae and look at a top-down view of the relationships between those various populations. Thank you.
Symbiotic systems can help us to understand better later stages of binary evolution that have impact on the chemical evolution of the galaxy and formation of stellar populations. The knowledge of the chemical composition is essential, but nowadays it is very scant. We started a research program to perform the chemical abundance analysis for a sample of over 30 symbiotic giants. Here are presented results obtained for 4 of them. The standard LTE analysis was used. We obtained significantly solar metallicity for RW Hydra and near solar metallicity in the upper cases. We've analyzed this by comparing with the trends for various galactic populations and taking into account the kinematics. Taking into account the kinematics, we confirm expectations as to the memberships of the systems of the galactic populations. Thank you very much.
In this poster, we present the results of proton motions measured for the 535 regions of the Eskimo Nebula, based on the HST image for two epochs separated by 8.8 years. We calculate the proton motion of the nebula based on 2 methods. The first method is based on the key of the chi-square minimization, and the second method is based on cross-correlation techniques. Also, we calculate the distance of the nebula, using the radial velocity taken from high-resolution spectroscopy observation and the motion vectors in the inner shell calculated by the cross-correlation method.
Okay, here I present the picture sort of photometric data of 14 planetary nebulae with world riot or Wikimedia central stars. From this data, we compute the nitrogen to oxygen ratio from collisionally excited lines and the carbon to oxygen ratio from faint optical recombination lines. Our results permit us to put some constraints to stellar evolution models, and we finally find that our planetary nebulae are in general carbon and nitrogen richer than average samples. Well, if you don't want to know something more, you can read the poster at the back.
After visiting APN5, I mentioned for polarization modeling, modeling polarization reconstruction came up from spherical symmetrical asymmetric. I turned my attention to high cloudy version of the code written by Christophe Morisset, and this poster shows that it's possible very easily to get the code and to obtain quite reasonable similarity of models to the existing images of Nebulae. This is of the images or morphological analysis. When I will learn how to do this velocity structure, how to add the, I think these results will be worth of publishing. The big advantage of the code evident by Christophe Morissette is now that the graphical interface is included. So you obtain after a minute of computation, well, nice view, whatever you wish, and compare with your observation. The next poster, I have attention to Moccasin code. It's fully 3D, not pseudo 3D, but without any graphical interface. So I have to ask my younger colleagues at the university what I can use instead of commercial IPL. They advise me to use YT project, which is well known among people working in hydrodynamical computation. So together with this younger colleague, we produce a Python script which reads output from Moccasin code into this YT project. So within this simple script, if you want, you can obtain it from me via email. Then with this YT project, you can insert the Moccasin data and do with them whatever you wish, produce these images, that images. Examples of these images I show in this poster. This YT project is, with this project you can produce even such movies like Shazari, I don't know with which system images, movies were done, but this kind of project is YT project, very wide, very general.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this poster is about to look for planetary behavior of the galaxy, and by using, you can't see here, but two sets of filters, and this is the JPAS and JPLAS survey that is made for the physics of the accelerated universe. And the nice thing here is that instead of using imaging, what we have here is imaging in 58 filters, 54 are narrow-band ones, and then you have another 4 slow filters. So you can, what we're doing here is looking, trying to thinking about the way you can identify the haloplanetary nebula that look like these kind of things using this set of filters. So here we perform with this the spectrum of this galaxy, and you see this kind of structure. So we can use this much more than an image, but the spectrum of the planetary nebula. And well, the results that you need, you guys that know how to do this service to help you develop the tools.
Bueno, en este trabajo nosotros estamos... perdón. In this work, we are studying the planetary nebulae, KN61. We obtain photometry and spectroscopy for the central star and nebula. We have also obtained narrowband imagery in different bands for the nebula. We only detect emission in oxygen and helium-2. We detect S alpha and S beta of this emission. This emission is for the nebula. The photometry in the band I and B filters, we don't do also evidence for the orbital modulation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, in this poster, we present two modes of PNELF. We prefer to present the PNELF in a cumulative mode, and we discuss the problem with beams. We think that there is a problem with beams, so that's the why we present in the cumulative. So we make a model with two modes. We can reproduce the brilliant part perfectly, and also with this accumulated, we can fit all or more points. So we think it's better. So and we can find if there is a dip in the planetary nebula. We have to make some hints or something with the physics of the planetary nebula.
Hello, so in our project we want to do hydrodynamic simulations of clumps and clump interactions to figure out the lifetime of clumps like you see them in the helix nebula, and basically depending on parameters like clump size, clump density contrast, and shading if you have more clumps. On this poster we present our radiative transfer treatment, which we do with the help of a cloud database, and some preliminary results of our hydro setup with the radiative transfer that is still in the testing stage. So if you would like to know more, to my poster.
Hi, I'm Riviera, and I'm an undergraduate student in physics engineering. I'm presenting to you my first astronomical work under the supervision of Nebulae, and in this poster we are presenting the zone polarization observation of protoplanetary nebulae and how the polarization changes on time. And we don't have any final results, but I'm still learning how to write this and analyze it. Thank you.
Without photons, there is no astronomy. Without radiative transfer, there is no astrophysics. And without good computation, there is neither. Which is why I'm talking about numerical radiative transfer. Now, consider that you have something that's a 3-vector here, a 3-vector there, and you have to connect it with a 7-dimensional problem. That's too hard. So what we do is we represent a matter distribution by a point distribution. And how you do that depends. You can, for instance, have the point distribution the same density as your matter distribution, or you can have the density distribution depending on, for instance, the optical properties of your medium. Then you connect the dots. How do you connect the dots? Depends on what your distance recipe is. For instance, you can have nearest neighbors or nearest neighbors in diffusion time or something. Now, suppose that you represent your matter by 1,000,000 points. Effectively, you have to solve a 1,000,000 by 1,000,000 matrix, which is something that you cannot do. However, the nice thing about this is that if you have one point and you connect to the nearest neighbors, you have only 20, 30, or 50 nearest neighbors, which means that you have a matrix of 1,000,000 by 50. And that is doable. There is a technique of solving that goes faster than you click your mouse. So the only thing you have to do is do your computations. This meshes absolutely fantastically with SPH computations, with AMR. It is a little bit harder, but both can be done very quickly.
Thank you. So we thank all the
So after one as Romano, Noah as Noah. There will be the classical football soccer play at 1 p.m. You can put your name on the place the paper and ask Eric Lagadec, who is in charge of this.
So